Well, so many of us have seen that video, and I think it would be interesting to know, how did it happen? I mean, you've spent 20 years or more studying consumerism. Or maybe I should ask, what did you study? What is it that you committed to? Take us on a little bit of a journey of sort of what you started to study and how you became an activist for consumerism.
Sure,
and then we'll get
glad
to it.
I actually think there's some interesting lessons in here for others who want to change the world, some interesting lessons I learned on the way about how we communicate about this stuff. So I grew up in a very environmentally aware family in the Pacific Northwest. We used to go camping a lot in the Cascades. Since this was before the days of DVD players in cars, we used to actually look out the window and talk to each other. And my siblings and I would muse about how each summer the forests started a little bit later and the strip malls went a little bit further. And as a kid, I didn't know about hydrological cycles and carbon sequestration, but I just felt in my gut that something was wrong when I would pass those clear cuts. I would look at them and think it was like a scene of violence. Something felt wrong. Or when we were driving up our little in our little station wagon, those huge logging trucks with those giant logs. I was like, why is this happening? I was confused. I ended up going to college in New York City, which is a weird place to go if you're interested in forests, but it turned out to be very fortuitous because that's where I learned the next piece of the puzzle. I went to college in Manhattan. My dorm was on 110th Street. My campus was on 116th Street. I would walk those 6 blocks every day, and literally there were shoulder-high piles of garbage. Actually, I saw some today when we were driving around Toronto, too. I find it fascinating, that stuff. I would look at it every morning, and in Seattle, we're like eco-la-la land. We don't have shoulder-high piles of garbage. So I would look at it and wonder, what is in that every morning? And then I'd come home in the afternoon, and it would be gone. So I said, what is it, and where is it going? That's where I picked up my habit, which I still have to this day, of opening up garbage whenever I go to a new place and digging through it and seeing what it is. Because it's a fascinating entree into what's happening in that community. So as a college student, when I did that, I opened up the bags of garbage, and they were 40% paper. Still today, 40% of our garbage is paper, which is so easily reducible and recyclable. So I said, wait a minute, this is where my forests are going, is this bags of garbage? So then I wanted to see where it went afterwards. I went to the Fresh Kills landfill, which is where New York City's garbage went for years. And it was like a bolt of lightning striking me in terms of my life purpose. If you can imagine, I was standing there, I looked out. Well, first, who's been to a landfill? Is anyone? Oh, that's so great. I really recommend you guys go to landfills. Like, I think it should be required before you get a credit card. I stood there and I looked out as far as I could see. It was just waste. Like, it's the highest point on the eastern seaboard. Along with the Great Wall of China, it's one of 2 man-made structures you can see from space. It was just incredible, this waste. And I just thought, what is going on? Like, who created a society that is based on destroying resources as fast, and why is no one talking about it? I was 20 before I went to a landfill. Like, how is this kept secret? So I can imagine my mother. She sends me off to this Ivy League college. She says, what are you going to study? And I said, garbage. So I studied garbage. I studied environmental science and politics. I went to Washington, D.C. and worked for an environmental group working on garbage.
But you studied environmental waste. That's okay. You studied environmental waste.
I studied environmental science. But my focus was particularly on garbage. I just think,
like, is there a course on garbage?
Oh, there's lots of them. You know, chemical cycles in the environment, lots of different ones.
Yeah.
And my main focus, since I was in New York City, was why New York City should not burn its garbage in incinerators. Let me just say, nobody should burn their garbage in incinerators, including Toronto. Nobody should. It is an enormous waste of resources. So that's really what I focused on.
Right. And so when you left, did you do an undergraduate degree or a graduate degree?
Yeah, then I went to graduate school at Cornell, and I again studied garbage, city and regional planning.
Did you do a thesis on garbage?
I did a thesis on
what was it called?
International waste trade, on the phenomena of rich countries sending their garbage and toxic waste to poor countries to get rid of it cheaply.
So when you left school with this knowledge and passion and insight, where did it take you?
I went down to Washington, D.C. to work for environmental groups, and I got a job at Greenpeace. And this was right in the early 1990s when information and awareness about waste was really exploding. And there were proposals to build incinerators and dumps all over North America, just hundreds and hundreds of them. And communities were resisting. They didn't want these things in their communities, rightfully. And so what we were promoting at Greenpeace was, instead of looking at a pile of waste and saying, where do we put it? which locks you into the burn it or bury it model. Could we look upstream? Could we design the waste out of use? Could we make stuff less toxic so it was more recyclable? Could we make stuff more durable so we weren't throwing it away so fast? Could we make stuff safe and sustainable and durable? And so we worked with a lot of companies, municipalities, to reduce waste at source rather than find a place to put it. Some companies and cities were really not interested in that, and they were committed to finding the cheapest and easiest way to get rid of their waste. So this whole international trade in waste blossomed. And people were actually putting waste on ships and sending it around the world to third world countries, sometimes paying farmers.
In order to recycle it.
Sometimes to recycle it. First it was just to get rid of it. They would lie about what it is. There was a case I worked on in Haiti where the city of Philadelphia sent toxic incinerator ash from its garbage incinerator to Haiti and said it was fertilizer.
And Haiti paid for it?
They got an import permit for fertilizer. Maybe a Haitian government was paid off. Maybe they were lied to.
And what would they do when it got there?
They just dumped it. They just dumped it and ran. And that happened in a lot of places. And so this is how I ended up traveling around the world, tracking this waste. And that's how I visited literally hundreds of factories where our stuff is made and dumps where our stuff is dumped.
Right. And so from that, you got into doing the video? Like, what happened between there and creating the video? And for everybody who's watched the video, do you have that sense, like, hearing her voice? Because you hear it on the video, right? And it's just so inspiring. And, like, she goes from one question and you follow her to follow her, right? When you hear her voice now, isn't it great to see her in person? It's just wonderful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I did track international waste trade for 10 years. I mean, that did take a long time. A group of us working at Greenpeace.
And just track it? Like, did you discover things and then people would hear you and change their behavior, or mostly were you just kind of collecting information?
Well, I worked with a team of people. I worked at Greenpeace International, and we decided we wanted to get an international ban on exporting waste from the world's richest countries to the poorest countries. We wanted a UN convention. So we had a team, and we divided it up. Some people that like to wear suits would do the lobbying part in Geneva and Brussels. Different people had different jobs around the world. So I was the investigator. So if our waste had already gone somewhere, I would go there and sneak into the factories and take soil samples and hair samples and document the damage. Sometimes I would hear about the waste while it was still en route, so I'd go ahead and say, hey, you guys in South Africa or Haiti or India or Bangladesh or wherever it was, there's a ship coming with toxic waste. You guys want to do something? So I'd organize around it.
Some of when you talk about that you would look and uncover waste, and maybe I have the wrong image here, so help me, but like, do you go to dumps and like pick through and
sometimes.
And is it yucky and smelly and dangerous and germy and everything?
It's dangerous because the companies are putting dangerous chemicals in our consumer products, like all that stuff in the dump.
When you go, do you wear like gloves and a suit?
Oh yeah, no, not suits, but gloves. Yeah. But sometimes it's not waste. Like, it doesn't look like waste. Like there was one case of a company in South Carolina that had hazardous waste that just looked like gray dust. And they wanted to get rid of it cheaply. It would have been expensive to dispose of it here. So they mixed it in with a batch of fertilizer and sent it to Bangladesh. And the Bangladeshi farmers spread it all over. And you wouldn't know looking at the fertilizer.
And did you out this company?
Yeah, we outed them. We went there and took samples. Actually, that was the hardest moment for me in my 20 years of working on this stuff, was when I went to a farm in Bangladesh. And actually, I wrote about this story in there. And I found a farmer who had put it on this hazardous waste on his fields. And the way that they put it on is that the young kids carry these baskets and go like this, and it's this dust, so they're all breathing it. He put it on his fields. I wanted to take samples because I was trying to pressure the United Nations to outlaw this practice. And the farmer kept smiling at me with through this translator, explaining that I'm taking samples because there's hazardous waste all over his fields. And I asked the translator, why is he smiling? And he said, oh, because now that you know, your government will come and clean it up, right? And the worst moment of my entire 20 years in the work of waste was to look at him and say, no, they won't come.
And did the UN ever, and I know you talked about this a bit, but did the UN ever put a resolution that banned exporting waste?
Yes, I'm happy to say it's a great example of how a small group of people can make big change. We got an international convention called the Basel Convention. It has a whole long name, but it was signed in Basel, and so we call it the Basel Convention. Originally, the Basel Convention was very disappointing. It just basically set up a system to legalize waste trade. So we kept fighting. We got what's called the Basel Ban, which now outlaws the export of hazardous waste from rich countries to poor countries. There's one industrialized country in the world that has not yet ratified this.
Who's that?
The United States.